Welcome back to another quick programming tutorial. Today we're going to take our selection and looping structures from what we did previously in the videos and turn them into flowcharts so you can see what those diagrams look like. So if you haven't yet watched the pseudocode logic of selection structures and looping structures, please go back and watch those videos first, and that'll get you the understanding of what the logic is. And in this video, my goal here is to show you how the flowchart looks. We've already talked about the logic, so I just want to show you what the flowchart actually looks like and how I like to set them up and keep them all nicely aligned. So I'm going to come over to draw.io, that's my preferred flowchart maker, and I'm going to create a new diagram. We'll just make a blank diagram, and we'll call it selection and iteration examples, right? And again, I'm going to go down to my flowcharts. So let's start with some of these easy ones. Maybe we'll come to the sales problem that we had before. Okay, so here's my editor, and I have on the right-hand screen what our logic was before, and we'll just take it kind of example by example. So a single alternative statement. Again, this isn't full-blown pseudocode, not a huge long problem, so there's no start and stop that I'm going to be putting in here or any declarations or input, just the process of the condition. So conditions generally start with a diamond symbol, so we're going to find that diamond, which is right here, okay, and we can drag it in. And right away in there we can say something like sales greater than 50,000. I'm not even going to bother putting the keyword if in there because the picture is going to be enough to tell me whether or not it's a selection structure or a looping structure. Now here, if the sales is greater than 1,000, then I've got some processes I'd like to do. So here I'm going to set the bonus equal to 1,000. Okay, we might minimize that a little bit. We're also going to, remember we can drag that down, put in another process. We're going to set the commission plus equals 0.02, and we might display our quota. All right. So there's basically our idea here, and now I can tell that this is a selection statement because I'm going to have flow lines that come in from up here. They're going to march down this way, and on the yes side of this answer, or true, they're going to work their way through here, and then eventually they're going to meet up down here underneath everything else. And so what I'm going to have out here is the no side to this argument, and I will kind of drag that down so it's nice and neat, and maybe drag it over a little bit, but I'll put the word no on this. And so I know that essentially this is a one-way selection structure. So I might have a flow line coming in from the top here, okay, not a big deal, and then it exits out the bottom, but there's my single-way selection structure or one-way selection structure. If this is true, we do these things. If it's not, we don't do anything. We just move on with the rest of our logic. So that's a pretty simple structure for the one-way selection. Now, if you're going to do a dual alternative, so something like these SAT scores, okay, then we're just going to have something on both sides. So again, my decision structure, let's drag that in. And I might have something like SAT is greater than 1100, okay? Then I might drag in a, let's see, we had a display, so an input output, so there's my symbol, there it is. And I might simply display acceptance. Okay, we're going to keep this pretty short. And then on the else side of things, we might display that you weren't accepted, that you've been put on a wait list. And we might also throw in there, there's my arrow, there it is, other output, display, retake. Okay, so again, the purpose of this is not to be pristine with what's being said here, but just to show and demonstrate the setup. So this is on the no side of things, if that's not true, and this is on the yes side of things. I always like to keep my yeses or trues off to the right and my no's off to the left. It's just a matter of preference there. But then again, I do always bring these back together, okay, so that they can match. Now there are some tools in draw.io to try to get rid of some of these extra arrows. If you click this side pane here, you can eliminate the arrow and just click none on that particular one, and you will get a nice flowchart in that manner. So here I've got this. Works out very nicely. I can move some things around or keep it right where it is. But essentially what I have here is a dual alternative, a fork in the road, and you can see the actual fork. I come in, I hit this question, and I'm forced to pick a path. If this is true, we do this, and then we come back to the logic, and this is completely skipped, so you can tell how it's being skipped now. Here I come down. If it was false, no, I would come through, I would do this down here, and then I would come through here, and this would never happen. So there is what our dual alternative structure looks like. Okay, so fairly simple. Nested structures can easily be taken care of as well. You just have to make sure that you're putting questions within questions. So maybe we'll scroll down here and do our nested structure. If the salary is greater than 5,000, so we'll basically bring sort of the same idea that we had in there before. So I just might copy this just to be simple. Okay, C, Control V, and bring it down. And don't be afraid to do some copy paste, whatever it takes. All right, now I want to make another decision. Okay, and I'm going to bring that down here and take this flow line and kind of put it here because I always think it looks better. And I like having the lines, the arrows on the end, so I might also include that. Okay, so here, my next question, okay, if I'm down here, years worked. Oops, typing in the wrong spot. Greater than 1. And then I've got some things that I can connect here. So I might have a display, and we'll go display qualified. Okay. And I like actually having these slightly lower, and again the flow line itself coming up to the top of it. I just think it looks nicer. And then we also have the else side of this to say that we need to be with our current employer. So again, I'm going to come over here. Okay, this would be no, you must be with your current employer. Okay, and so again, I'm going to drag this down here a little bit, and it kind of connects nicely right away. And I might bring that over. So again, you might have to play with some of the positions of some of these things. All right, but I've got that. And now remember, we also had the else to the first if. So I'm going to bring a flow line off of this, and that is going to be another display. And what I'd like to see out of that is that display, you must earn $50,000. Okay, and again, I'm going to bring this down a little bit. Okay, to be nicely aligned with what that question is there. And again, I'm going to start bringing things back together. So for me, I always like to, since my flow line would have come through here initially, let's see if we can draw that line real quick. Right through here. Obviously, we want the arrow to be a little different. Okay, so it's coming down through there, but I want to make sure everything gets connected and connected appropriately. So I'm actually going to connect both of these again right underneath its own question. And this is where it gets a little tricky. But then I want to connect this flow line to this right underneath its question. So I'm going to drag this one in and under and make sure it ends up underneath and maybe a little bit further down. And these little guidelines can help you do that. And I want to grab a flow line from here and kind of try to break it out a little bit this way. So I might drag it out that way. And you got to finagle it a little bit till you get what you want. Actually want that under there. And we'll connect, bring it up, and there we go. So it takes a little bit of time, but you can get there with some clicking. and it's just a matter of getting your chart to look appropriate. So this chart looks really, really nice. I've got this flow line coming in. It says if the sales is greater than 5,000. If it's true, if we're on the yes side of things, then we can do this. If we're on the no side of things, then it says we need to earn $50,000. And again, we have another question on the yes side and on the no side. And I'm always very consistent with what's yes or no being on the right or left. So that works out really nice in that way, okay? Now the other nested examples are obviously, this is kind of the bad example with the control over the one piece of information, the score. But I'll be perfectly honest with you, you can't have like an else-if structure in Flowchart. You are stuck doing all of the nested work, and it just kind of turns into that else-if as you're coding it. So I will go ahead and draw this out, and I will spare you the details and how it looks until we get to the end. So give me a minute and I will code that and you will see it. Okay, and now back to the problem we had. So let me kind of make some room here so that you can see what's going on. All right, so essentially this is what we have. We've got that nested structure. You can see how it kind of tails off to the left instead of the right. This might be one circumstance where instead of putting the yeses on the right, I would put the nos on the right. but it's completely up to you and how you want to go about it, as long as you're organized and you have things clearly labeled. Okay. Whoop, I flip-flopped those, didn't I? I want to go yes here and no there. But again, you can see how the scaffolding and how the ladder kind of works and how it mimics what's over here in pseudocode. So if it's greater than 90, do it, and then we exit. If it's not, check 80. If it's greater than 80, we do it, and then we exit. And so on and so forth as we go through, and you can follow the flow lines and see how it exits each and every time, and how you can only pick one path of the 5 that you have here. Okay. The logical operators, the and, ors, and nots, you just throw them in the question, and if it's true overall, you do it. If it's false overall, you don't. Okay, so those are actually no different than what we just set up here. Okay, so let's move into the looping examples. Actually, let's just cancel that. We'll just scroll down. Okay. So let's bring that over. All right. In some of our looping examples, they're actually fairly simple. We just need to have our decision-making structure kind of set up, ready to go. So here it's still just a question that we're asking. It's just a matter of where does the arrow come back to. So let's get our decision structure out there, which I can never seem to find, but there it is. All right. And actually, before we do that, let's bring in a process, because with our looping structures, we always have to have, whether it's counter-controlled or condition-controlled, we have to have that control variable. So here, I might do something like value equals 10, or set value equal to 10. Let's shore that up. And then I might say something like value is less than 1,000, right? Okay. I'm going to drag this into here, and then I'm going to build out a couple displays. Value, bring this down, hits, and then we will make a process to set value equal to value plus 10. Or increase value by 10. Maybe I'll drag that out so it's nice and neat. But here's the important part. With a looping structure, you need to make sure that your flow line comes back from the body of the loop all the way up, right, to where the loop started. That's the important part, okay? And we should get an arrowhead on there as well, so let's go ahead and put one. Okay. Should have arrowheads on all of this, but it's important in the looping structure. Now that all happens on the yes side of things. We always, always, always loop on the yes side of things. And then finally, with the while loop, this is where you might want to exit straight down instead of off to the side, but this would be on the no side of things, okay? Because then we would continue on with our programming logic, whatever it may be. Same basic idea. If we were doing these, we would just have some more inputs coming in, but essentially it still builds out the same way. So your loop is always going to be kind of off to the right, your body, but the trick is it always has to come back, and it always has to come back to the question, no matter what you want to do. And it really doesn't matter whether you're doing a condition-controlled loop or a counter-controlled loop. They all basically set up the same way. So let me see how this really works with a for loop. Okay, so let's do this for loop where we count basically from 1 to 10. It's essentially the exact same setup. There is no getting around it in a flowchart. You can't really say it any differently in a flowchart form. So we might say something like set counter equal to 1. We will have our condition, okay, our decision-making structure. We can connect these lines, and we'll go while counter is less than or say equal to 10, okay, because we're counting up to 10 by ones. And then here we will do our little pieces where we're going to want to set the square equal to counter squared, okay, and then we will display square. And again, we need this to work its way through. Now, the only other thing that we don't have here in pseudocode that we need in our flowchart is that incrementation. We don't have that in a flowchart, so we need to make sure that we do that process as well. So we're going to say counter or equal to counter plus 1. So increase it by 1, and then we can start having our flow lines come back up and around. We'll bend it out, bring it over, and it always has to come back to the question. If it doesn't come back to the question, it's not structured properly. Okay, at least a while loop would not be structured properly. So something you need to be mindful of there. We can kind of clean this up. So really, in a flowchart, there is no difference between a while loop and a for loop, simply because it's just the way the shapes kind of work out for us and how we want to go about doing it. We don't want to put anything more than the question inside the diamond. We don't want to put processes in there like we do in pseudocode because it just reads better in pseudocode. But realistically, every for loop you ever write can be written as a while loop anyway. So in a flowchart, we write everything as if it's a while loop. And when we get to it and see it in our flowchart and we want to actually code it, we just look at it and know, hey, this is a counter-controlled loop because I have all three of those parts. I am working with a counter. So I'm just going to go ahead and use the for loop anyways. And we get the logic. And the point of this is to get the logic down so we know what's happening. And either way, once we're done with the loop, we can exit and we come out the bottom. So hopefully that helps with how to create your flowcharts and your pseudocode. One of my major points of emphasis is anytime you have a flowchart, there should always be this kind of heart to the logic coming straight down through the center. And the only time you will branch right or left is on a decision. You'll branch right on the yes, okay? Left on the no, or if it's a loop, you can go straight down on the no, okay? But we should not see your flowcharts trailing off to the right unless it's in a decision. Notice how all of my processes in the loop or even in my decision-making structures, they were always vertically aligned. I want to see the same thing out of you to keep things nice, neat, and organized and easy to read and understand. That is just our process and how we are going to go about doing it. So they may take a little bit more time to set up, but all very much worth it in the end when it's easy to read and understand. All right, so hopefully this helps with this tutorial. Possibly in the next video, you'll see us go through an entire problem that may deal with a looping and decision structure from start to finish in both pseudocode and flowcharts. So be on the lookout for that.